Have you ever wondered about the incredible sense of peace and protection that comes from placing your trust in God? In a world so often filled with uncertainty, where can we find refuge, strength, and unshakable confidence? Today, we'll journey through the timeless promises of Psalm 91 and discover how God's unfailing love and care shield us from harm. Before we dive in, take a moment to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an opportunity to grow in faith and understanding. If this message resonates with your heart, don't forget to share it with someone who might need encouragement today. The opening lines of Psalm 91 invite us to dwell in the shelter of the highest and rest in the shadow of the Almighty. These words are not merely poetic. They are an invitation to abide in God's presence daily. Imagine the peace that comes from knowing you are under the care of the Creator of the universe. In this place, you are shielded from the storms of life, whether they take the form of physical dangers, emotional turmoil, or spiritual attacks. The psalmist boldly declares that God is a refuge and a fortress, a place of safety where we can trust completely. Trust is such a powerful thing, isn't it? It's not just about saying the words. It's about laying down every fear and resting in the assurance that God is in control. As the verses continue, we are reminded of God's active role in our lives. He doesn't merely watch from a distance. He intervenes. Surely, He will save you from the fowler's snare and from deadly pestilence. These words assure us that no scheme, no unseen trap, and no disease can overpower God's protection. Just as a bird shields its young under its wings, so does God shield us with His faithful love. His promises are described as a shield and rampart, unbreakable and steadfast. What an image to hold on to when fear tries to creep into our hearts. The psalmist assures us we need not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. This paints a picture of round-the-clock protection. In the quiet hours of the night, when worries often grow louder, God's presence is like a soothing balm to the soul. During the busyness of the day, when challenges come unexpectedly, His guidance becomes a lamp to our feet, showing us the way. The dangers may be real, but they cannot touch the one who has made the Lord their dwelling place. Let these promises sink in. When the world around us feels unstable, when the news is filled with turmoil, and when personal struggles weigh heavily, remember, God has commanded His angels concerning you. They are watching over you, lifting you up in their hands, ensuring that you do not stumble. This divine provision is not just a fleeting promise. It is a daily reality for those who trust in Him. You are not alone in your struggles, no matter how overwhelming they may seem. God's angels stand guard, a reminder of His meticulous care for every detail of your life. As we meditate on these promises, we find that they are not just ancient words meant for the past, but living assurances that are just as relevant today. The psalmist reminds us that 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. This is not a denial of the challenges we face, but a testament to God's unmatched ability to protect us amidst the chaos of life. Picture a battlefield, a place of uncertainty and fear. Yet, even in such a setting, the believer stands secure. God's protection doesn't mean we won't encounter trials. It means those trials won't destroy us. We may see difficulties around us, but we will only observe the ultimate defeat of the wicked. This assurance is not based on our strength or ability, but on God's unwavering faithfulness. The key is found in making the Lord your refuge and the highest your dwelling. When we choose to stay rooted in His presence, no harm can truly overwhelm us. Have you ever felt surrounded by challenges that seemed insurmountable? Perhaps it was a personal struggle, an unexpected health crisis, or a sudden change in circumstances. In those moments, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but Psalm 91 reminds us of a deeper truth. When you say, "The Lord is my refuge," you activate the promise of divine protection. It's a declaration of trust, a surrender of your fears, and a recognition that God is greater than anything you face. This psalm also introduces us to the comforting image of angels, God's messengers and protectors, who guard us in all our ways. They are not a figment of imagination, but a tangible part of God's care for us. Imagine angels surrounding you, lifting you up so that you don't even strike your foot against a stone. What an incredible thought. These divine protectors are at work in ways we cannot see, shielding us from dangers both visible and invisible. This divine protection is not a passive experience, but an active partnership. God equips us with the strength and authority to overcome obstacles. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. These words symbolize the power we have over threats and adversities that may appear overwhelming. Whether the danger is physical, emotional, or spiritual, we are empowered to walk in victory because of God's presence in our lives. It's important to understand that this victory doesn't come from our own might, but through our reliance on God. There's a peace that comes with knowing that even when we face situations that feel impossible, we are not fighting alone. God goes before us. His angels surround us, and His promises shield us. When we embrace this truth, fear begins to lose its grip, and faith takes its rightful place in our hearts. Take a moment to think about the areas in your life where you need God's protection. Are you battling fears about the future, concerns about your family, or challenges in your work? Whatever it may be, bring it before the Lord, knowing that He is your refuge. His promises are not just comforting words, they are a shield, a fortress, and a place of safety you can always rely on. As we reflect on this, let's also remember the power of prayer. Prayer is not just a ritual, but a way of inviting God's presence into every corner of our lives. When we pray, we align ourselves with His promises and open the door for His protection and guidance. Whether it's a whispered cry in the night or a joyful declaration of praise, every prayer is heard and answered by our loving Father. In these verses, we are reminded of God's declaration, "Because He loves me, I will rescue him." This powerful statement reveals the heart of God, a heart that responds to love with deliverance, protection, and honor. When we set our love upon Him, we enter into a relationship of trust and devotion that unlocks His promises in our lives. Consider the simplicity and depth of this relationship. Loving God is not a complex task. It is a genuine surrender of our hearts to Him. It's acknowledging that He is the source of all we need and trusting Him with our lives. This love is not just about feelings, but about choices, choosing to trust Him in the storms, to rely on Him in the uncertainties, and to cling to Him when everything else feels unsteady. And in return, God promises to be our deliverer, our protector, and our ever-present help. The next assurance is even more personal. He will call on me, and I will answer him. What an incredible privilege it is to have direct access to the Creator of the universe. In a world where so many voices compete for attention, God assures us that when we call, He listens. This promise is not limited to specific situations. It is for every moment, every prayer, and every cry of our hearts. God doesn't just hear us, He answers us. Think about the moments in your life when you've called out to God. Perhaps it was during a time of crisis, uncertainty, or deep need. How comforting it is to know that we are never alone in those moments. God hears every whispered prayer, every silent plea, and every joyful thanksgiving. His response may not always look like what we expect, but it is always perfect, always timely, and always rooted in his love for us. The psalmist goes on to say, "I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him." Notice the beauty in this promise. It doesn't say we won't face trouble, but assures us of God's presence in the midst of it. Life is full of challenges, but as believers, we have the assurance that God walks with us through every valley. He doesn't leave us to fend for ourselves. He is our guide, our strength, and our deliverer. God's deliverance is not just about removing us from difficulty, but about transforming us through it. In the trials of life, we often discover new depths of God's faithfulness and love. We grow stronger, wiser, and more dependent on Him. And when He delivers us, it's not just a rescue, it's an elevation. He honors us, not because of who we are, but because of who He is, a faithful Father who delights in blessing His children. As the psalm concludes, it offers a final promise that fills our hearts with hope. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is not merely a promise of years, but of a life marked by God's presence, peace, and purpose. A satisfied life is one that finds its fulfillment in God, not in fleeting successes or temporary pleasures. It's a life that rests in the assurance of His salvation and rejoices in His goodness. Imagine the richness of a life lived under the shadow of the Almighty. It's a life where fears are replaced with faith, where anxieties are overshadowed by God's promises, and where challenges become opportunities to see His power at work. It's not a life free from difficulties, but a life deeply rooted in the unshakable foundation of God's love and protection. As you reflect on these promises, let them stir your heart toward greater trust and devotion. Where do you need to experience God's rescue today? What burdens do you need to release into His hands? Take a moment to pray, surrendering your fears and uncertainties to the one who holds your life in His hands. As we delve deeper into the truths of Psalm 91, the imagery of God's love and care becomes even more powerful. Consider the declaration that God will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. This metaphor paints a vivid picture of a mother bird shielding her young from harm, providing not only protection but also comfort, warmth, and safety. It's a tender reminder that God's care for us is deeply personal and rooted in His love. Under His wings, we are shielded from the storms of life. The winds may howl, the rains may pour, and the dangers may feel overwhelming, but His protection remains steadfast. This doesn't mean we are spared from every hardship, but it assures us that no storm can destroy us while we are held in His care. His faithfulness becomes our shield, a barrier that stands between us and the challenges we face. Faithfulness is not just something God does, it is who He is. He is unwavering, unchanging, and utterly dependable. When fear threatens to take root in our hearts, we can combat it by remembering the character of God. He has never failed us, and He never will. Every promise He makes is backed by His infinite power and love. It is this truth that strengthens us to face each day with courage, knowing that we are never alone. The psalm reminds us that we will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day. Fear often finds its greatest power in the unknown and the quiet of the night, when our minds are free to wander into worry, or in the unpredictable moments of the day when challenges arise without warning. Yet God's promise of protection extends to every hour. In the darkest nights and the brightest days, He is there, standing guard over His children. Have you ever experienced that still, quiet assurance of God's presence in a moment of fear? It's like a calming voice that silences the noise of anxiety, reminding you that you are held in the hands of the Almighty. This assurance is not based on circumstances, but on the unchanging reality of who God is. His protection is not bound by time or limited by human understanding. It is constant, unwavering, and sufficient for every need. The psalmist speaks of 1,000 falling at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, yet harm not coming near you. This is not just poetic imagery. It's a powerful testament to God's sovereignty. In a world filled with uncertainties, this promise is a beacon of hope. Though troubles may surround us, they cannot consume us because God's presence is our refuge. He is our protector, shielding us from dangers seen and unseen. This is a truth that changes the way we live. When we truly believe that God is our refuge, we begin to approach life differently. Fear loses its grip and confidence takes its place. We no longer need to carry the weight of every worry or anticipate every danger. Instead, we can rest in the assurance that God is watching over us, guiding our steps and protecting us from harm. God's promises also remind us of our role in this relationship. He calls us to dwell in His presence, to make Him our refuge. This is not a passive act, but an intentional choice to align our lives with His will, to seek His face daily, and to trust Him wholeheartedly. It is in this dwelling place that we find the fullness of His protection and peace. As we journey through life, there will be moments when the challenges feel insurmountable. In those times, remember that God's promises are a fortress you can run to. They are not empty words, but living, active assurances of His faithfulness. Whether you face the terror of the night or the arrows of the day, His protection is always enough. The closing verses of this psalm offer a breathtaking summary of His promises: rescue, protection, honor, and salvation. They are a declaration of God's unwavering faithfulness to those who love Him and call on His name. These promises are not just words on a page, they are the foundation of a life lived in trust and devotion to the Almighty. God says, "Because He loves me, I will rescue Him." The love spoken of here is not a distant admiration, but a deep, abiding connection. It's a love that prioritizes God above all else, a love that recognizes His sovereignty and goodness in every aspect of life. And in response, God pledges to deliver us from every peril, not because of our worthiness, but because of His great love for us. This divine rescue is not just about removing us from trouble, but about bringing us closer to Him, refining us, and strengthening our faith. Equally powerful is God's promise to protect us because we acknowledge His name. To acknowledge His name is to recognize His authority, His power, and His presence in our lives. It's an act of surrender that says, "Lord, I trust You completely." And in that surrender, we find the safety and security of being under His protection. He shields us not only from physical dangers, but also from emotional and spiritual harm, guiding us along paths of righteousness. The psalmist continues with God's promise: "He will call on me, and I will answer him." This is a reminder that prayer is not a one-sided conversation, but a dynamic relationship with the Creator. God hears every call, every cry, and every word spoken in faith. He is never too distant or too busy to respond. When we call on Him, we invite His presence into our situations, and His answers, though sometimes unexpected, are always perfect and filled with love. God's promise to be with us in trouble brings unparalleled comfort. Life is full of storms, but as believers, we are never alone in the midst of them. God's presence transforms our trials into opportunities to experience His grace and power. He doesn't just deliver us. He walks with us through the fire, ensuring that we come out stronger, wiser, and more deeply aware of His love. His deliverance is not about avoiding difficulties, but about overcoming them with His strength. In these final verses, God promises not only deliverance, but also honor. He lifts us up, not for our glory, but for His. Our lives become a testimony to His faithfulness, a beacon of hope for those around us. When God honors us, it's a reflection of His goodness and a reminder that He delights in blessing His children. This honor is not about earthly recognition, but about the eternal joy of being known and loved by Him. The closing promise is one that fills our hearts with hope. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. This is not just a promise of years, but of a life rich in purpose, peace, and the presence of God. To be satisfied with long life is to live in the fullness of His blessings, to experience His goodness in every season, and to walk in the assurance of His salvation. It's a life marked by gratitude, joy, and a deep sense of fulfillment that only comes from Him. Salvation is the ultimate promise, the crowning jewel of God's love for us. It's the assurance that no matter what we face in this life, we are secure in His hands for eternity. It's the promise of a future filled with His glory, where every tear is wiped away and every struggle is redeemed. This salvation is not something we earn, but a gift we receive through faith, a gift that transforms our lives and gives us hope beyond measure. As we close, let these promises resonate deeply in your heart. Choose to dwell in the shelter of the Highest, to make Him your refuge, and to trust in His unfailing love. Wherever you are on your journey, know that God's protection is with you, His presence surrounds you, and His promises never fail. If this message has encouraged you, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an opportunity to grow in faith. Let us know in the comments how Psalm 91 has inspired or comforted you. And remember, you are always covered by the love and faithfulness of God. Until next time, may His grace and peace be with you always.